I was in my third month of retirement, and I was learning how to be a good house husband. I was beginning to think my previous job was easier and more fun than cooking and cleaning. We still retained our weekly cleaning lady, so my cleaning chores were more along the lines of keeping everything tidy. Our kids had long flown the coop, so keeping the house tidy was hardly a chore. I was given the golden handshake for my job as VP of a large bank, and the offer was just too good to turn down. My wife, Amy, and I, Ed Hughes by the way, spent countless hours discussing my retirement offer and decided it would be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I was given $250,000 in cash with a matching amount going into my 401k, then I received 50% of my monthly salary for life. I was able to keep all my other benefits including insurance. We both thought this was very generous. So at age 58 I found myself without a job for the first time since I was a teenager, although I had several things that I wanted to explore. Writing was one of those as I had long aspired to write, but never found an opportunity. Also, I wanted to learn to work with wood, something I found fascinating but again no experience. Amy, my wife of 30 years, was simply the love of my life. She was 6 years my junior at 52, had changed little since the first time we met back in college when she was a junior while I was in graduate school. I fell in love at first sight and courted her tirelessly for 6 months before she agreed to a date. The rest is history as we began to date exclusively and were married after she graduated. Our 2 children were born during the second and third year of our marriage, and then I got the snip as we agreed 2 were enough. Amy was a fantastic mother and stayed at home until both started school, then got a job in the HR department of a large regional hospital. She is a very caring and unselfish person, and that persona comes across naturally when she meets new people. Our 2 children are now both settled in professional jobs and have families. Neither live nearby, but both are within a 4-hour drive. Amy has worked at the hospital for 20 years and last year was promoted to Chief of Human Resources, a position that carries a lot of responsibility with high expectations. Before I get ahead of myself, a little more about Amy and I. Amy is slender, ginger hair, and standing at 5 feet 6 inches with shapely legs and a sweet little butt. She has always had a high libido and always ready for sex. Amy knows that turns me on. Sex with Amy is so enjoyable because she is so proactive and really gets involved. She isn't the passive lay there and do me type of woman. I know Amy would be up to daily sex, but I can only deal with it 2 or 3 times a week. My old body needs time to recover. In short, Amy is always ready for a romp. Like I've mentioned, my name is Ed. I'm 58 and a little overweight. I stand 5 feet 10 inches and consider myself pretty much out of shape. One of my retirement goals, in addition to what I have already stated, is to lose weight and get back in condition. Working in a bank is not conducive for hard and lean bodies. I thought if I could lose weight and get in better shape, I would be able to enjoy an improved sex life. So, I find myself in the 3rd month of my retirement enjoying daily the benefits of going to the gym, having lost 15 pounds and 2 inches around the waist and feeling quite proud of myself. My muscle tone has actually improved and the softness in several areas has now been replaced with muscle. My gym has a boxing ring and I hired one of the older trainers to teach me the finer skills of boxing. Boxing is brutal, but after a while, I began to accept being beaten and actually started to land a few blows myself. I thought Amy would notice my changed body when we had sex, but she never said a word. Instead of pumping for 5 minutes and taking a rest break, I could pump a solid 10 minutes or more until I was done. I always got her off, but she never mentioned a word about my improved body or performance. I didn't tell Amy I was going to the gym, and she never noticed I was eating less and had cut back on alcohol as well. I just put it down to her new workload and stress of the job. She seemed preoccupied, and finally I asked why. During dinner, I asked, "You seem totally distracted lately, like you are in a different zone and unaware of anything going on around you. What's wrong?" Amy thought for a second and finally replied, "Nothing is wrong. I am just overwhelmed by work. Would you like to share anything?" "No. I just need to work it through myself, but thanks for asking." So that is where we left it. Amy has to travel every quarter for an HR meeting. She works at a regional hospital, and there are over 40 scattered across the South and the larger cities. The HR chiefs all gather to meet, discuss strategies, staffing, work through problems, and set financial goals. The meeting goes from Thursday afternoon through Saturday, with return on Sunday. The usually venue is the Marriott Hotel in whatever city that is chosen. This would be the 4th time for Amy. I know she looks forward to going, and because of her position I encourage her. Networking with other HR chiefs is very beneficial, and understanding what works for one often works for all. We usually eat dinner at 6:30, even though Amy officially finishes work at 5 o'clock. She is rarely able to come home by then, so with that in mind I schedule dinner for the later time. If she is unable to get home in time for dinner, I usually get a text. She texted the Wednesday before her Thursday departure saying she was going to be late as she needed to buy a few things for her trip. I said no problem, I will put a plate in the microwave. She got home around 8 o'clock with several bags of clothes. Amy always dresses professionally and maintains a very fashionable wardrobe, so I wondered why she needed so many new things for her conference. I was working on my computer that night while she packed. Later we had wonderful sex and drifted off to sleep holding each other. I would miss her for the next few days, but I knew that when she returned on Sunday, we would have mind-blowing sex. We both made breakfast the next morning, and afterwards as she got in her car I had a tear in my eye. I could count on one hand the number of times Amy and I had been apart during our marriage, and 4 of those times had been to attend the conferences. Amy and I texted and called each other frequently while she was gone, and then before I knew it she was back. She seemed extra horny upon her return, and we had even better sex than normal Sunday afternoon. She stayed in bed afterwards and napped while I got dinner together. We shared a nice bottle of wine during dinner, and then she went back to bed using the exhaustion excuse again. I cleaned up and spent some time on the computer before joining her in bed. The next morning was a bit of a rush with Amy getting ready for work and making time for breakfast and coffee. Just before she departed, she asked if I would do her laundry, something she always did herself on Sunday afternoon after returning home. Yesterday, she just collapsed from exhaustion. I picked up her laundry from the bedroom floor and as well as the bathroom. I always turn the pants inside out before putting them in the washing machine, and imagine my surprise to pull a pair of thongs out of one of the legs. I have asked Amy for years to wear thongs, and she has always refused, saying she didn't want a strap between the cheeks of her, but claiming it would be uncomfortable. I was completely stunned. Naturally, I smelled the crotch and they definitely smelled like my wife. Why had she bought and worn a pair of thongs? Surely not for me, because I wasn't even there. Was my wife having an affair? Was I getting seconds yesterday when we had sex? I became emotional and had to sit down. There had to be an excuse. This was so unlike my wife, but she has been different this past year. What would I do? Confront Amy? I decided to snoop a little and see if there was anything else. I looked through her closet, but found nothing unusual. Then I looked in her chest of drawers and again came empty. Her suitcase was sitting just inside her closet, so I pulled it out but found it was locked. Why lock it after you unpack? Fortunately for me, it was a Samsonite and all the keys are the same for the same type of suitcase. We had bought matching suitcases 2 years ago, so I found my key and unlocked Amy's suitcase. I was speechless by what I found inside. There was a pair of Jimmy Choo shoes with 4-inch heels. I have known my wife forever, and she has never worn anything higher than 3 inches, and never would she pay $500 for a pair of heels that she only wore once in a while. There was a large, garment-size, Ziploc bag inside with lingerie, and it was all racy. More thongs, half-cup bras, stockings, and very sexy nightgowns. What the hell was going on during the conferences? I put everything back and relocked her suitcase. What was I going to do? I loved Amy more than anything or anybody in the world. She was my rock. We shared and did everything together. I could not live without my wife. That night, during dinner, I told Amy that I had found something very odd in the laundry. This piqued her interest, and she asked what. I said, I will show you. I got up and collected the thong and returned to the table, placing the thong in the center. I found this rolled up in the leg of your dress pants. I have asked you for years to wear thongs, and you have always refused. Is there something you want to tell me? She thought for a second and finally replied, I bought them for you. Okay, if they are for me, why have you already worn them? She rarely got angry, but I could see her face getting red and I realized she was about to lose it. You have never been jealous or questioned anything I have ever done. I replied, you have never given me a reason to be jealous or question you. Amy was by now almost shouting, why are you questioning what I do now? I have never been unfaithful. No, not once. Just explain the thongs, then we will drop it. Well, you have been after me for years to buy some, so I have. I wore a pair to see how they feel. Okay, did you buy anything else you want to share? No. With that short exchange, we dropped it. I realized my investigation needed to be bumped up a notch because I realized that Amy had not come clean and totally didn't mention the other items in her suitcase. I went and worked on my computer, and finally Amy went upstairs. I checked the kitchen looking for her purse and cell phone, but she must have taken them with her. Her laptop was still laying on the table, so I took it into my computer room and locked the door. I checked her home email, and there was nothing unusual. Then I checked her work email and again found nothing. I looked into the history and found a Yahoo account that was often used, but without a username and password, I would be locked out. I had to check her cell phone. The next morning, I woke up to the sounds of the shower running, but had no idea how long she had been in the shower. Her purse was on the dresser, so quickly I grabbed her cell phone and unlocked it. Her text messages revealed nothing. I typed in Yahoo Mail in the browser bar. Yahoo opened up and her password and username had been saved, so I only had to click open. The guy's name was David, and he appeared to be a predator. He was the HR chief at a hospital about 3 states over. He wanted Amy to dress sexy and be more open with him. From what I could gather, they had not had sex, but had seriously made out. Amy appeared to be reluctant. I heard the shower turn off, so I quickly shut everything down and replaced her phone. I had the guy's first name, knew where he worked and what he did. I went to the hospital directory, and within a few minutes I had his full name. Then I had to pay $30 for an online person search, but then I had his full history, including names of family members, phone numbers, email addresses, and of course snail mail address. One of my golfing friends is a lawyer who has friends on the local police force, so I called and asked if he arranged to have the guy's name run on the police net. He called back minutes later and had discovered the guy had been charged, but not convicted of 3 counts of sexual harassment. Apparently, in all cases the charges had been dropped. He was a serial sex predator. 3 charges against him cannot all be wrong. Maybe he is innocent of 1, but surely not 3 charges. I was determined to not only ruin the guy, but also to make sure he couldn't or wouldn't have sex with Amy. This is much easier said than done. The next morning, I got access to Amy's cell phone, found the username and number of characters in the password. Later, I pulled up Yahoo Mail on my computer and started searching for her password. We are both very consistent in using passwords that mean something to us. I spent an hour before I figured it out. The password was the name of Amy's first dog when she was a kid. She often talked about the dog, so I was very familiar with the name. I was into Amy's private email, and as long as I didn't open unread messages, Amy would not know of my snooping. Apparently, David had been hitting on her since the first conference. He had taken it slowly, but at the last conference he got a second base. I think he was hoping there would be a home run at the next conference. I printed out copies of all his emails. His emails were like love letters, and I had the feeling he was grooming her. Amy's responses were typical and to the point. She did not want to have an affair, and at the last conference she had let things advance further than she was comfortable. I started developing a plan for the next conference and needed enough evidence to hang him, but I also wanted to prevent them from having sex. I went to Best Buy and bought a minicam with transmitter that worked over Wi-Fi. I only had to pair it with my tablet computer after downloading special software. Amy spends considerable time in our bedroom each night, so that is where I placed the cam. The cam had an audio receiver so I could hear and see what was going on. That night, after dinner, Amy went upstairs while I relaxed in my computer room. I powered up the cam and my tablet came alive with a view of Amy in our bed. Amy was relaxing on the bed and reading a novel. After an hour, her cell phone rang and it was her friend, David. Luckily for me, Amy put the conversation on speakerphone. They chatted about work and David kept saying he was looking forward to the next conference so he could see the different lingerie Amy had bought. Amy didn't promise, but just said, "We will see." The pig knew all the right things to say and Amy was soon rubbing between her legs. I needed to end this, so I made some noise going up the stairs and found Amy reading her novel. I brushed my teeth and got into bed and lay beside her. I love you to the moon and back, and as you know, I have never even once looked at another woman. I would be crushed if I ever found you in the arms of another man. You know my feelings on infidelity. This is all I think about. I have never been unfaithful to you, and have no intentions to do so. What brought this on? Why the sudden jealousy? My reply hurt Amy, until I found that thong. I have never questioned your loyalty, or been jealous, however. Now I am confused. I want to believe you, but part of me thinks otherwise. I'm sorry, but I feel as if something is going on you aren't sharing with me. I wish I had never bought the damn thing now. The weeks passed and I continued to watch the minicam. David called Amy weekly, and they were making plans for the conference. So was I. The cam worked so perfectly I decided to buy another one and sneak into Amy's room and install the cam while she was in a meeting. I could then, from a nearby room, monitor her actions. I am not a voyeur and certainly not the husband who gets turned on by seeing his wife in the arms of other men. My intention in setting the cam up was to prevent Amy from having sex. Certainly not to watch her and get off from it. I was determined not to be a cuck. I am lucky in the respect that what occurred happened in her room and not his. The week of the conference arrived, and this time it was in New Orleans, a party town which might affect my plans. I watched Amy pack for 2 days and saw nothing out of the ordinary. However, when I took the trash out, I checked Amy's car and noticed a separate bag in the trunk. I knew what was inside and figured she would just swap out her clothes at the airport. Amy left the next morning with a kiss and "I love you." I followed her 3 hours later. At the hotel check-in, I explained that I was Amy's husband and was meeting her, and after showing ID, they gave me a key to her room. I knew she was in a meeting from 3 to 5 o'clock, so I quickly went up to her room and set up my mini-cam with a view from the door to the bed. That operation to hide the cam in Amy's room only took 10 minutes, so I again approached the check-in desk to find a different person working. So I asked for a room on the same floor as Amy but a few doors away. I had to get as near as possible to be within range of the transmitter, so my excuse was to be near the elevator. Luck was on my side as I was assigned a room 3 doors away. You know the story about the best laid plans of mice and men. Well, it's true. The problem with cams is getting the damn thing to communicate. First with a Wi-Fi signal, then with the receiver, which in my case was my tablet computer. I worked for hours trying to establish a link, but I was unable to make the connection. Wi-Fi in your own home is so much easier than in a hotel. I could not get the transmitter in the cam to connect to the hotel's Wi-Fi. Maybe the problem was the cam, but I never got a connection. I felt like a duck without water. I was in a room near Amy but had no clue about what she was doing. So I called her, and she answered straight away. "Ed, you never call this early. Are you okay?" "No, I'm not okay. I was just taking a nap and dreamed of a strange man making out with you. It was so real. I had to call and hear your voice. You know you can trust me." "Thanks. I feel better already. I just needed to hear you. I miss you so much. I'm going to change to go out to dinner, and will call you as soon as I return to my room, I promise. I love you." "Okay, speak to you in a couple of hours." "I love you so much. Don't go flashing your boobs on Bourbon Street." She just laughed. I slipped into her room while she was gone and left a dozen red roses in a vase. I had placed a card so she would see it, and it simply said, "So you won't forget me." She called me straight away after returning to her room. I answered immediately and asked her about dinner. She said it was good and had enjoyed the company of a couple of other female HR chiefs. She thanked me for the roses, and I asked her to put her phone on FaceTime so I could see them. Amy was a little careless, and I could see her blouse undone and asked her about it. She said she was getting ready for bed. We finally said goodnight. How was I going to endure through 2 more days of this? I knew the creep was with her at every opportunity. Had he already screwed her? Friday afternoon when the conference ended, I was hiding in the bar when they went up to her room. I gave them 45 minutes and could not wait a second longer before opening the door and entering her room. I walked in and saw that they were so heavily making out they were both oblivious of my presence. I took several photos and a short video with my cell phone. Finally, tired of the show, I grunted and Amy immediately became aware of my presence, so she pushed David from her and tried to sort out her clothes. I flat out told him to get the hell out of the room before I beat him up. He wasn't threatened by me, but feeling humiliated, he left. "Darling wife, would you like to tell me what exactly is going on?" "Oh, Ed, I am so sorry I got into this mess. I've been so confused. I am not sure what to do. I love you, but I crave the attention I get from David. What is his name and how long has this been going on?" David Becker and I started talking to him when I attended the first conference, and our conversations have just continued at every conference since. "Okay, except you no longer just talk, do you?" "No, we have started kissing and I have allowed him to fondle me. I find it hard to believe that is all that's happened, however. Are you aware that the next step will be full sex? I mean, you were undressed and your cunt was full of his fingers when I entered the room. I did not intend to allow it to go that far. Doesn't kissing and fondling turn you on? How will you be able to resist him going further if he hasn't already? I bet you are wet as a drowned rat now." Amy turned around on the bed and started crying. Then she asked if I would stay the weekend with her. She didn't trust herself to be alone with the a-hole. She laid there until she drifted off to sleep, and I watched her for an hour before waking her. Her eyes were red and swollen. I was extremely angry and hurt, but I told her let's dress up and go out to dinner then dancing. Let's have a good time and try to put this mess behind us. If you want me to stay with you, then I will. That man won't get near you again. She had nothing but sexy clothes to wear, obviously all newly purchased. She was embarrassed as I watched her dress in her half bra, followed by thong and thigh-high stockings. Then she put on a figure-hugging black dress with heels. I told her that I knew she had only brought sexy clothes, and I was hurt because she was wearing clothing for David that she wouldn't wear for me. She apologized and said, "I will wear whatever you ask in the future." I wondered what the future would hold. Dinner was good. In fact, I ate too much and felt like a slug afterwards. We went back to the hotel bar. The dance floor was crowded and Amy wanted to dance. Because of my exercise program, I was in much better shape and was able to dance without getting tired, and we really had a good time. I excused myself to go to the bathroom, and when I returned, Amy was not at our table. I found her on the dance floor in the arms of David. I was having none of this, so I interrupted them and advised him to keep his hands off my wife. Not just now, but also in the future, and added that he was lucky I didn't trash him this afternoon. Amy tried to smooth things over, and I just told her to be quiet. Becker is about 6 inches taller than me, and must weigh at least 50 pounds more, and was not intimidated by me. He just laughed and asked how a chicken like me could back up that threat. Like a bully, he took the first punch and caught me off guard. I was on my back and momentarily saw stars. The side of my face felt like it was on fire. I finally struggled to my feet and faced him. Despite such a mismatch in sizes, he rushed me, and I just sidestepped and tripped him. He again came at me like a madman, and I landed 4 solid punches as I danced around him. My gym training was paying off. I am sure his pride was hurt, but he kept coming and I kept punching. Finally, he slowed down and left himself open, so I kicked him in the balls. Then I connected with a left and right combination which put him on the floor. For good measure, I kicked him in the balls again. That felt good. He said enough. He was laying in the fetal position, holding his balls, obviously in pain. I looked down at him and said, "Leave my wife alone, or I won't be so kind next time." I backed away looking for Amy and saw her rushing to David's side. That proved her loyalty and who she wanted to be with, so I paid the bill and left. The barman saw everything and said he would smooth it with the police as the other guy threw the first punch. I left saying I didn't want to press charges, however. Maybe in hindsight I should have. I didn't see Amy again that night as I spent the night in my old room. I don't know if she spent the night in her room or not. The next morning, after removing the cam, I checked out and flew home. The next day, Amy was due to arrive back from New Orleans. I was in the kitchen drinking coffee with my suitcases packed when she arrived. "Ed, why did you leave Friday night?" "Amy, why should I stay? I didn't see us having much of a marriage left. You decided who you wanted to be with, and it wasn't me. I'm sorry, but you hurt David and I was concerned for his injuries. Have you forgotten who threw the first punch? Look at my eye. Does it look normal to you?" My eye was totally black and still swollen. I could just barely see. "I know you spent Friday night with that a-hole, and most likely all day Saturday and that night too. You must be well drilled by now. I didn't have sex with him. I'm tired of your lies. I'm leaving, and you will hear from my lawyer this week. We have had 30 years of happiness, and now you have thrown it away for a weekend with some worthless piece of shit. Are you aware that he had been charged by the police 3 times for sexual harassment?" "Ed, no, I didn't know that. You have lied and deceived me for the past several months. I cannot tell you how much you have hurt me. I was onto your little game almost from the beginning. I'm so ashamed. I beg your forgiveness." "So, Amy, did you screw David after I left?" "No, he pressured me terribly, but I didn't." I asked, "How can you prove it?" "I can't, you will just have to take my word for it." "So, you were saying I can believe what you say and trust you? Why should I?" "I'm telling the truth." I pulled up her skirt and discovered she wasn't wearing panties. "What do you say to that, and where are your panties?" "I assumed that was from this morning just before you left." "I'm sorry, it was only one time. Please believe me. After the beating you gave him, he couldn't get out of bed until this morning. He came to my room just as I was leaving for the airport and demanded we have sex. He bullied me until I finally consented. I picked up my suitcases and said, 'My lawyer will be in touch. Be prepared to be destroyed.' And I left. The bitch had betrayed me despite all my efforts to save her. She had no intentions of staying faithful to me that weekend. She would have cheated regardless of what I had done. If not that weekend, certainly the next time. I was finished. Now let's check the story from Amy's side. A little over a year ago, I was promoted to Chief of HR. It is a very prestigious job, and I was proud of my new position. Everybody, including my husband, Ed, could see that I had become a changed woman, but I never did. Part of my job was to attend the quarterly meetings along with the other HR chiefs. There at the first conference I met David. He was also an HR chief, but from another state. David always found me and never missed an opportunity to flirt. The first 2 conferences that I attended, all we did was flirt and stay up late talking, drinking, and then he started touching me. He always asked if I wore sexy underwear, and if not, would I buy some for him. The 3rd conference, he started kissing me. I was flattered by his advances, but I had to keep reminding him I was a happily married woman and didn't want to have an affair. That didn't stop the kissing, and then he got his hand inside my blouse and fondled me. I kept my resolve and didn't allow David to do anything else, although he certainly tried. I had purchased thongs and other sexy underwear, but David didn't have an opportunity to see everything. I told myself he was harmless and just enjoyed his company. He was several years younger than me, and I have to admit I was deeply flattered by all the attention from a younger man. Then after returning from this conference, I was too tired to do my own laundry and asked Ed to do it. He found a thong in my dirty dress pants. Ed had asked for years for me to wear them, and now he found one in my dirty clothes after a business trip. I was so embarrassed but acted like I bought them for him. He accused me of having an affair, which I simply told him I had not. That was somewhat of a half-truth. I had not had intercourse, but I was deceiving Ed by having what I considered a platonic affair with David. I did feel that Ed knew more than he was disclosing, but I denied everything. I felt my husband watching me very closely as the next conference approached on the horizon. I had to pack my sexy clothes separately and hid them in the car as he kept checking my suitcase. After arriving at the conference, we had a meeting straight away, and after that meeting ended, David and I went to my room. He was kissing and pawing at me as soon as the door was closed. His actions did arouse me, and I was finding it more difficult to push him away. Suddenly, my cell phone rang and it was Ed. He said he wanted to hear my voice, but it was enough of a distraction to send David on his way, but I agreed to meet him for dinner. Dinner was lovely, and once again we returned to my room. I knew it was dangerous as David really wanted to have sex with me. Ed had sent roses, and that reminded me of my vows, so again I kicked David out of the room. David would have had sex with me during lunch the next day, but we ran out of time. He had gotten me down to my underwear, and I was ready for it, but our lunchtime was over, and we had to return to the conference. We both told each other we would resume at the end of the day. How did I allow it to go that far? The afternoon seemed to drag by, but finally we were in my room again, and this time David was all over me, and I was so close to an orgasm when I heard a grunt from someone else in the room. I don't know how long Ed had been in the room, but I am sure he got an eyeful. He kicked David out and then laid into me. I was so ashamed. I tried to assure him that David and I had not had sex, but he didn't believe me. He said I was cheating by just kissing and fondling, illicit phone calls, and deception. Not to mention all the sexy underwear and clothes I had bought to wear for David. I had not thought of my situation that way, but he was right. I told him I was ashamed and asked him to stay the weekend with me. I could have stayed in bed the remainder of the weekend and cried, but finally Ed said, "Let's go out to dinner and enjoy ourselves." I was completely embarrassed getting dressed in front of Ed in my racy underwear and clothes. I had never worn anything like that for him. That made me feel even more guilty. We enjoyed dinner and then went dancing in the hotel. We danced several slow songs and were really having a good time till Ed went to the bathroom and David appeared. He forced me to have a slow dance with him, knowing how Ed would react. He wanted to make my husband jealous. David is a big man, much bigger than my husband, and was an excellent dancer for his size. Ed interrupted our dance and told him to stay away from me. David called Ed a chicken and tried to bully him. Then he hit Ed in the side of the head, and I thought he was knocked out, but he was only stunned and slowly got back to his feet. David called Ed several more names and tried to hit him again, but this time Ed was ready and hit him back. In fact, several times, and then David was on the floor. He looked hurt, and so I went to his side to see if I could help him. Ed thought I was taking David's side and left the hotel. I didn't think Ed would hurt a flea, and here he just beat the shit out of a man much larger than himself. Where did this man that I was married to come from? He was overweight and out of shape, yet he squared away against David like he fought every day. To the best of my knowledge, Ed had never lifted a finger against anyone. This was so out of character. I managed to get David back to his room and stayed with him. He was hurting bad and was in pain. He was a little better on Saturday, but still remained in bed. We ordered room service and I kept ice packs on his face and chest. I said goodbye to him Saturday night. He looked better, but was still not functioning as normal. We did not have sex or even cuddle. Sunday morning, I was running late and rushing to pack in order to make my early morning flight when David knocked on the door. I opened the door and he burst in and was all over me, demanding we have sex before I left. He was acting like a bully, and finally he pushed me face down on the bed and pulled my dress up around my waist. He removed my thong and was preparing to enter me when I said, "The only way you are going to have sex with me is with a condom." I was trying to put him off by saying that knowing neither of us had one. He came prepared and pulled one out of his pocket, and I watched as he pulled it on. Then he just rammed into me from the rear. He was brutal and didn't care about anyone but himself. I was used to a less robust pounding, and this was just the opposite. I couldn't help myself, but I got aroused, and before I knew it, I felt wave after wave came over me as I climaxed. Maybe it was the newness of such a different man, or the brutality of the way he did me, but he pushed all my buttons. David continued his assault until he finally climaxed as well. Even though I was physically and emotionally shattered, I got up and tried to clean myself. I didn't have time to find my thong or properly clean myself, so I just grabbed my bags and left. I was so ashamed that I just sat in shock on the way home. I didn't even go to the bathroom and properly clean up, which turned out to be a big mistake. I was pleased to be home, but found Ed's face a mess where David had hit him. We argued back and forth until I finally confessed to everything that morning, but Ed never gave me a chance to explain. After arguing, he left, and I just collapsed in shock as I realized my marriage had just collapsed. In retrospect, I guess I had teased David all weekend and did give him the impression we were going to have sex, so his reaction should not have been totally unexpected. I should have been able to put him off, and I regret even opening the door. Nevertheless, the sex was consensual and I had cheated, and with Ed leaving and the looming divorce, I got what I deserved. Now back with Ed. I checked into the Hilton and realized I needed to speak to my children and let them know what was going on. Using the conference call function of my phone, I talked to them and explained my plans for a divorce from their mom. They were both shattered that their mom would do such a thing. We were all crying when we hung up. Within minutes, Amy was calling, and now I was the a-hole. How could you tell our children and turn them against me? I said, wait a minute. Are you now saying I betrayed you, hid a relationship from you for months, and then had sex with a predator? I'm confused. I thought you were the one who deceived me and then cheated. Amy just hung up the phone. That night in the hotel, I sent several screenshots to David's wife. The screenshots showed him in all the photos, first with him kissing Amy, then with her topless in bed, and finally several with David. I might be an angry husband, but I wanted my pint of blood, and someone else should share my pain. The next morning, I called my lawyer, who referred me to an excellent divorce lawyer. I went to the bank and split the money 50-50ths, including my severance pay and 401k. That was more than the bitch deserved. I canceled all the credit cards and then got one in just my name. Amy's cell phone belonged to the hospital. I saw the divorce lawyer that afternoon and instructed him to go for the jugular. I was tired of being the nice guy. Also, he was instructed to serve Amy at his earliest convenience. I finally thought I was thinking rationally and called the hospital CEO, whose office was in Atlanta. He is a busy man, but I managed to beg 5 minutes of his time. I explained about how David Becker had serially seduced my wife at the HR conferences. Also, I had copies of all the emails to back up my story. I asked why the hospital would hire an administrator who had been charged with, but not convicted of, several cases of sexual harassment. Surely, anyone having more than one charge against them should raise red flags. Didn't they do background investigations? He was stunned and didn't have an answer, but promised he would investigate. I asked for his fax number so I could send a copy of the emails. I told him I also would email further photographic evidence if he wanted it. Finally, he wanted to know what I wanted. I wanted Becker fired. I told him that my wife had been hunted down and seduced by a sexual predator, and she shouldn't be disciplined because of this mess. There was no reason for Amy to lose her job. That evening, Amy called me. She had settled down. Ed, why did you send those photos? Are you in trouble because I sent photos to David's wife? Not yet, but I may be later on. Apparently, she has shared them with the hospital. You do realize everything will come out in the divorce court. I'm charging you with adultery, and this type of divorce can get very messy. The photos plus all the details will come out in court. David's wife has left him, and he was fired today. That is one of the reasons I sent the photos. Do you know he has 3 kids still living at home? Have you forgotten we have 2 kids of our own? You seem more concerned about David and his troubles than about ours. Why is that? Have you forgotten your actions have broken up our marriage? Of course I'm concerned about us, but David and his family are younger, and I feel sorry for them. So why did you screw him if he is married with 3 kids? Looks to me like you may have broken up 2 marriages. Couldn't you see that he was just a sexual predator? I simply hung up the phone. I didn't hear from Amy the remainder of the week, but found out she had been served. I put a deposit on an apartment that I could afford and finally got out of that expensive hotel. Now I was back to cleaning again. But actually I did very little cleaning. I really didn't care. With my time my own, I hit the gym twice a day and boxed in the afternoon. I was getting hit less while my punches were finding their targets. My body was becoming toned and I was developing some serious abs. I was on a strict diet that included no alcohol and was finally at my goal weight. The gym threw a party for me and we all celebrated with carrot juice. The weeks passed, and through the grapevine I discovered that Amy was about to lose her job because of the affair. There is little tolerance for anyone in her position to play around, especially with another employee. I didn't really care because since I was unemployed, I didn't think the court would force me to pay alimony. I made a note to check with my lawyer. We had been separated about 3 months when she called and asked if we could talk. I agreed, and we planned to meet at Starbucks the following day. Amy looked good, maybe a little thinner, and I complimented her weight loss. She thanked me but again never said a word about my weight loss. Here I was standing in tight-fitting clothes with bulging muscles. I had lost 6 inches in the waist and nearly 50 pounds in weight, and she was clueless. She started crying and telling me she had lost her job and had no job prospects. I told her to move out of the house so we could sell it, and reminded her that she had a lot of money in the bank. Maybe not enough to retire on, but enough to live on for several years. I knew she was hinting for me to come home, but I never took the bait. For now, I was happy doing what I was doing. Then she started talking about David again. He too had lost his job as well as his family. I said, "Good, now he can screw you whenever you want, and you won't have to hide what you were doing. I haven't seen him since that last conference and have no plans to. I understand what you told me about him, and now I just wish I had never met him. I have somewhere I need to be, and I didn't come here to talk about David. What do you want? Please come back home. I don't trust you anymore. I don't think I can live with you again. You deceived and lied to me so much that I am finished. You care more about David and his family than about us and our family. I put my family first, but apparently you don't. When you want to talk and won't mention David, let me know. I do not want to hear about the guy you screwed." I got up angrily and left. The divorce was finalized and almost a year passed. And no, because of our assets, cash in the bank, and because we were both unemployed, I didn't have to pay alimony. My lease on my apartment was coming to an end, and I needed to find somewhere to live as I didn't want to stay there. I had not heard from Amy, although my children kept in touch with her. They kept me informed concerning what and how she was doing, which apparently wasn't too well. I asked if she was seeing anyone, and they replied no, as she was too hurt and upset. Besides, she was still in love with me. However, I was pleased to hear that she was seeing a counselor. During my search for a place to live, I found a large 100-year-old fixer-upper on the edge of town, which in a few years would be a ritzy neighborhood. The house had been on the market unsold for 2 years, so although I knew nothing about working with wood and renovating old houses, I put a low bid on the house, and to my astonishment, my bid was accepted. I had a thorough professional inspection done which highlighted what needed to be accomplished and/or replaced. I had 5 pages of work. With a house that needed so much work, I was only able to go to the gym once a day. However, I was no longer trying to lose weight, just maintain my current weight. I just threw myself into working on the old house. I worked on the house from the time I got up till I went to the gym in the evening, and I was sleeping better than ever. My body stayed sore all the time, but I was in good condition. But working on the house was using different muscles groups. My body became even more toned and muscular. The roof needed to be replaced, and I had it done professionally as it was too big an undertaking for me. The same with the electric wiring and plumbing. I also had a new air conditioning system with ductwork installed. Those jobs have to be done by professionals, and I was happy to pay what they charged. The downside to all this was that I had overspent my budget, so further renovations had to be done as I could afford them. I realized I needed help but couldn't afford to pay very much, which ruled out long-term professional help, so I placed an ad in the local paper. Responses were few and far between. A couple of responses were from men in their 70s, and one from a high school student. A few days later, I was working outside, and it was very hot, and I was wearing baggy clothes and a hat, when a car pulled up and Amy got out. "Hello, Amy. How have you been?" "Well, not so good. You know, I lost my job. In fact, I'm having problems finding work." "Yes, someone did tell me you had lost your job, but you have enough cash and investments to live a long time. You don't really need to work. I would like to volunteer to help you renovate the house. At one time, we worked really well together as a team. We did everything together." I wondered how she found out, then realized our children must have told her. "Yes, I remember. But that was before you took over the job as chief of HR. After that, you became a changed woman and had little regard for our marriage. I have apologized 1,000 times. I really don't want us to get upset and argue. I didn't come here for that. I would like to work with you on the house and don't really care about the pay, whatever you can afford. I do need help and haven't been able to find anyone, so I accept your offer. However, we are divorced and I have no intentions of taking you back. Ed, I understand and accept whatever terms you think fair. Okay, be here at 7 o'clock in the morning and wear old clothes." A year and a half had passed since the last time we spent time with each other, so I was nervous. Deep down, I felt like she was trying to get back in my good graces. However, my hurt, although serious at one time, had largely disappeared, although I was determined to stay single. We had always been a good team when working together, but I needed help, so even though I was reluctant to work with Amy, I agreed. Amy actually showed up at 6:30 the next morning, and she was dressed for work. I was shaving when she arrived, so I just shouted down to help herself to coffee. I was wearing shorts and t-shirt when I entered the kitchen. Amy took one look at me and dropped her cup of coffee. "Ed, what happened to you? I have never seen you looking so buff. And when did you start shaving your head?" "I started working out when I retired, but you never took the time to notice. In all, I have lost 65 pounds and 6 inches in the waist. I have been lifting weights and now actually have a six-pack." I lifted my shirt to show her. "Oh my God, Ed. How could I have been so blind not to have noticed? Have you been learning how to fight too? Yes, I have been boxing since I retired too. If you had taken the time to notice, you would have seen bruises on my body and face when we were still together. I've often wondered how you took on David, especially after he laid you out on the floor. You were able to come back and beat him fair and square. I've never seen you lift a finger against anyone, and I thought that was so out of character for you. Well, I thought I was fighting for my woman, the love of my life. I had luck on my side because he was pretty slow. I've improved a fair bit since then. He wouldn't stand a chance with me now. I feel so stupid, was totally blinded when I held the top HR job. I thought everyone was below me, including you, so I shut out everything and everyone that meant something to me. I thought you were a different person when you were promoted. You were also wrapped up with someone else, so even though we were married and living together, you never actually saw or listened to me. I'm sorry I was so selfish. I've been going to a counselor and hope you will be able to see it changed me. We cleaned the spilled coffee, sat down, talked about the house and what work was required. She talked about always wanting a house like this, but we never had the time, money, or skills to renovate one. I replied that I still questioned my skill level, and if I had the money. Renovating an old house is terribly expensive. We both agreed the house would be wonderful when finished. Amy saw things differently from me, so having her input was welcome, although I still questioned how we would work together. Just so you know up front. As far as I am concerned, this is just a job, and I will make no promises when the work is finished. We are divorced and I aim to stay that way. I had told Amy this yesterday, but I needed to reinforce my intentions. I understand. I just want something to keep me busy. I can get by without pay, but I want to feel useful. We've always worked well together, and this is really important to me. I would like to see your renovation to the end. I will have no expectations when the job is finished, I promise. Okay, we are going to start by painting the outside walls and windows. Then we will start inside. But before we do anything, the outside walls have to be prepped. Amy was much more agile on the ladder than me, so I turned over the higher areas to her, and she did a wonderful job. She could climb up and down that ladder like a monkey. She was also a much quicker painter than me. We spent 10 days painting the outside of the house. The days were hot, and I usually painted in just my cargo shorts. I caught Amy staring at me several times. I think she saw a different person, but I wasn't sure if she liked what she saw or not. Amy started wearing less too. Gone were work clothes replaced by gym shorts and halters. She was as beautiful as ever. Our working relationship grew a little each day. We laughed and shared good memories from the past. Amy packed a picnic lunch each day for both of us, and we would sit under the big oak and share our food. I hate to use the word romantic, but our lunches were, and I started looking forward to them. We worked a long day from 6 a.m. till 6 p.m., only stopping for lunch or a cup of coffee. With two of us working, we were able to accomplish so much more. Not to mention that Amy worked quicker. We were a good team. Amy started volunteering to stop a few minutes early to make dinner before she went home. The food was delicious, and naturally I had to ask her to stay for dinner. This became a regular thing for us. I did not want to admit that we were getting closer as a couple. We never argued, had cross words, or spoke of her past indiscretion. I had mixed feelings about Amy. I enjoyed her company. She was an awesome worker, and true to her word, she never mentioned the pig she screwed, nor did she ever even suggest us getting back together. We just enjoyed each other's company. We had been trying to sell our house that we had shared for so long, and finally it sold. After a year and a half on the market, we had 30 days to close, so we had to empty the contents. Also, Amy had to find a new place to live because she was still living in the family home. Amy suggested since the furniture was half mine, I should buy out her share and furnish the old house with our furniture. I thought that was a good idea, as all of our antique furniture would fit perfectly in the 100-year-old house, so that is what we did. We painted and decorated like crazy for 2 weeks, then hired a moving firm to deliver the furniture. Amy's things were packed and stored in my garage. The house still required a tremendous amount of work, and the interior rooms were not completely finished, but we moved the furniture in anyway. We both admitted the house felt like a home, and were both pleased with our efforts. Amy, go home, shower, put on some fancy duds, and we will go out to eat to celebrate. She thought for a moment and then, do you mean go out as in a date? Yes, okay. I will pick you up in an hour. We both thought, and then realized our old house no longer had furniture or clothing, as everything had been packed. Amy had intended to check into a cheap hotel until she could find an apartment. Let's get your suitcases out of the car, and you can stay in the guest bedroom until you can sort out a place to stay. You can use the shower in the hall opposite your bedroom. I am not sure what clothes she had in her suitcases, but when she came downstairs she was dazzling. Not slutty, but definitely sexy and classy. You look wonderful. I had forgotten how well you clean up. Thanks. I don't have a lot of clothes to choose from, as I had not expected to be going out to dinner. We shared a bottle of wine during dinner, and although we both ate, I think we were too nervous to appreciate the good food. There was a band playing in the bar, so after we finished eating, we found a table in the bar area. The band was playing golden oldies, which were perfect for dancing, and I soon found Amy in my arms. She commented on how hard my body was. I asked if it was a good thing or bad. "Oh, it's good, believe me." We returned to our table, and I excused myself to use the bathroom. I half expected to find Amy dancing when I returned, but she was still at the table. I asked her if anyone had asked her to dance, and she just replied a couple of men had approached her, but she told them she was waiting for me. Even after I returned, men were asking Amy to dance, and she always had the same reply that she was saving her dances for me. I got up to refill our drinks, and a woman at the bar started flirting with me. I talked to her a minute too long. Amy approached the lady and said, "Honey, this man is mine. Go put your hooks in someone else." On the way back to the house, Amy thanked me for a wonderful evening and apologized for ruining it. "You were acting like we are a couple again. I wanted to show my appreciation and take you out to eat, and you assumed we were together again." I am not sure what to make of the situation. We didn't say much the remainder of the night, but the next morning she got up and went looking for an apartment. For the first time in weeks, I was working on my own and I discovered I missed my partner. Amy came back later that afternoon looking dejected. She had not found an acceptable apartment and was going to check into a cheap hotel that had weekly rates. "Amy, I've spent the day thinking. I would like you to continue to sleep in the spare bedroom. We can bring all of your things in tomorrow and unpack them. This is a huge step for me, so please don't make any assumptions and just give us some space. I know you aren't seeing anyone, but if you do, I ask that you not bring a man into this house. I will take you up on your offer." I had no luck today and didn't realize how hard it would be trying to find an apartment. I understand about the space and totally agree. As far as bringing anyone back to the house, I have neither dated or had sex with anyone since I cheated on you at that last conference. I have undergone months of counseling since then, and I am not the same person that I was then. I have realized since the first day you started working with me that you've changed. You are more like the Amy I was married to before you got that promotion. I like the current you much better. She agreed to do the shopping, cooking, and laundry in lieu of rent. That was an even trade in my book. We continued to work on the house. If a room that needed work contained furniture, we moved the furniture to another room. We retiled the bathrooms and refinished the hardwood floors. We weren't working quickly, but we were meticulous. I continued to go to the gym in the evening. My trainers were impressed with my boxing and encouraged me to enter an amateur boxing competition that was approaching. Because of my age, I would be boxing in my age group, not by weight. I have never done any competitive sports at all and was more than nervous. The match was scheduled during the day, so Amy and I took the day off. Amy was more nervous than me and wouldn't stop fidgeting. My trainer became my manager and assisted in my corner. My first opponent, although in the same age group, was larger than me but not as agile. The match was only 3 rounds, and I took a beating in the first 2 before laying out my opponent in the third. He didn't have the stamina to do 3 rounds, and I made him suffer for it. I was exhausted when declared the winner, but I was still standing while my opponent was on the floor being treated. I was given 2-day break before my next opponent. He was a better boxer and gave as good as he got, and we were both standing at the end. The judges ruled in my favor by 1 point. After another 2-day break, I was back, this time for the championship title. My opponent had been a semi-pro boxer in his teens, but then dropped out and only returned to boxing recently. He was a year older than me and in great shape, but proved to be a worthy adversary. I was on the floor during the first round, then I had him on the floor during the second round. In the third and last round, we stood in the middle of the ring and just duked it out, neither of us giving or taking an inch. After a full 60 seconds of this, he dropped his right hand, giving me an open target, and I connected, sending him to the floor. He was out cold. I had one. The crowd erupted cheering and shouting. Suddenly, Amy was in the ring hugging me and wouldn't let go. She had been very frightened for me to even take part, and now she was the proudest woman in the arena, my biggest supporter. I scanned the audience and realized that many of the cheering crowd were our friends or relatives. I had not told anyone of the competition, so she must have gotten the word out. Even our children were ringside. My match was the last in the competition, so the awards followed. I was crowned champion for my age group and received a large trophy. Amy immediately congratulated me with a big hug and kiss. She had, without my knowledge, arranged a party afterwards at one of the larger restaurants. This was the first time since our split that we were both together, in the company of our children and their families. There was no awkwardness at all. There were many friends I had not seen because they just dropped off the radar after the divorce, but everyone congratulated me and showered me with compliments. Most remembered me as a pudgy fat guy. None recognized me as I entered the ring, except of course, my ex-wife. We continued the renovation, and it was finally coming together. We were still sleeping in separate bedrooms, and of course not having sex, but otherwise we were a couple. We went everywhere together and shared everything. Amy even started going to the gym with me in the evening. We knew a day was coming when I would be forced to deal with our state of affairs, but neither of us talked about it, but the situation lingered on my mind. When Amy's bathroom was being worked on, she began to use my bathroom off the master bedroom. I forgot she was showering one day and entered the bathroom, and I had forgotten how perfect her body was. Even at the age of 54, I had purposely built a large shower with many shower heads, and it was big enough for 3 or 4 people, and it took all my willpower not to crawl in with her. Seeing her with no clothes on really got my heart racing, but I didn't know what to do. I knew she would have me back in a heartbeat if I asked her, and she would share my bed even quicker. I knew the situation was completely in my hands, and I was very tempted. Amy, true to her word, never tried to reconcile with me. I needed to talk to my children who knew our situation, so I set up a conference call. I explained my feelings and asked what I should do concerning their mother. My daughter asked me to remember the day Mom went looking for an apartment and how lost I was. I remembered, only too well. My daughter then said, "If you push Mom away now, how will you feel?" I said empty and lost, because by now I had totally gotten used to her being around. We were having a great time together, so why kick her out? So that was my answer. It had been right in front of me all along. We had become great friends, but without benefits, and I needed the benefits. That night I took Amy out to one of the better restaurants in town. We shared a bottle of our favorite wine. "Amy, are you happy?" She looked at me for a moment, then replied, "Yes, there are things that are missing, but yes, I am very happy." "What is missing that would make your life complete?" Amy looked at me like she really didn't want to answer. "I'm really not comfortable answering, but since you have asked, I miss the intimacy that we used to share. I miss the smell of your body. I miss sleeping in the same bed as you. I miss the sex we used to have. Do you really want me to continue? Do you think we can go back to where we used to be?" Ed, that is impossible, as we both have changed. Neither of us are the same person we were before our divorce. I think we have both grown, and speaking for myself, I feel like a different person. I have not only regained the values I somehow lost, but found a few new ones, and I would like to get past my mistakes. Would you consider moving back into my bedroom? Let's take it slow, and maybe in time we can get back to where we used to be. I did not say a word, and I just walked out. Amy and I reconciled, but we never remarried. I told her that I would never get married again, and our relationship needs to start afresh, like we never met before. Only then can I ever get over what she did to me. We are now a couple in every sense of the word and are in love. We continued to renovate the old house till it met our satisfaction, and now we are extremely proud of it. Amy and I did most of the work ourselves, having never done anything like this before. Once the house was finished, we started landscaping the yard. I still go to the gym and still box, although I don't plan on entering any more competitions. Neither of us plan to work again, but live on my pension and our investments. We aren't rich or even comfortable, but we do okay. You don't need a lot of money if you are in love. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.